Hi, welcome back for part 2 of the stone generator. In this part of the lesson, we're going to expose and start using this generator. So, exposing parameters is rather easy. In most cases, you can just go and do expose parameters and grab all your parameters you need. So the way I organize my parameters is by generator and by logical segments. And something that usually helps me to do that is by segmenting stuff on the graph. So this is where we left off before. The only thing I added in between the lesson was an ambient occlusion and blend it into a gray for the diffuse. The reason I did that is just so we can see the rock in 3D a little bit better, like so down here, because if not it would just be pretty much like this. So let's start organizing what we have here. So what I do is select nodes and then go add frame. In this case, well, these are nodes, they're mostly noises. I have my plasma, I have my clouds, etc. So I'll call this noise. You can also set up colors. I never tend to do that, but yeah, you can set up different colors. Let's say we start, all the noises will be red. And now we're going to go and grab the shapes and add a frame and say shape. And I'm just moving it slightly so it has a little bit of spacing. And this ones I will call going from left to right all the way to the histogram scan. I will call it generator. So I'll call it stone It's late at night, so excuse me spelling. Alright, so here we go. These guys will be, this is basically the area that we created to start chipping away at our stone. It is part of our generator, but it's going to be a subgroup. So in this case, I'll select all of this, and all of this will be add frame. I'll call it gen erode for erosion. And in here what I'll do, I'll move the unnecessary stuff that we'll definitely not need. The only reason we have this is to visualize what we're seeing. And where's my height map? Here's the height map. So this will be the output. And all this is unnecessary junk. This one I can add a frame by itself, and this one will be, I'll call it height balance. and this one out of frame output, and just checking it is set to height, and the label is height, and the identifier is output. And just to get some stuff out of the way, just like the other shape generators, if I go to my stone shape, you'll see that I filled up the parameters in here. So this shape node creates a single stone, etc., etc. The identifier, the generator, a category, and the label, my name, and contact information, and tags. In this case, it's a pattern. So basically, I'll just copy all this information over to rock example. Put all my information in there. And stone gen. Stone generator example creates infinite stones. Identifier is rock example. Label will be rock example. And category will be the same category as this one. So, generator. So now if I go and do rock, the rock example will appear here, and all the description will be laid out on there. Stone generator example creates infinite stones, a URL, and other information. You see the arrow creates a image based on the output. In this case, it's grabbing the normal. Once we delete this, it'll just grab the height, so you'll only see it as similar as these two, where it just shows the height. And the reason that these nodes are shown is because I'm saving them in the Substance a native folder for all the nodes. You can also set up an exterior folder that's linked. The only thing you have to do is set it in your preference in this area under projects. But that gets a little complicated. So going back to the generator. So I usually try to expose left to right, just to follow the generation path. So I do the obvious ones. I do the shapes first. So I go, in this case, I don't want to expose anything on this guy. This one's just top information. There's no real, well, I don't know. Let's see. Let's test out some stuff. I'm gonna set different patterns. So I'm testing out here the patterns to see if I'm going to get any interesting results. And I mean, the only one that gives a little bit more interesting result is that it's a pyramid. It also creates artifacts. So I think in this case I'll just leave it with the round, and we'll leave these two to do most of the heavy lifting. So in this case I'm going to expose the parameters for this guy, expose parameters, and I'm going to expose the size, side, scale I'm going to leave it to 1. I'll get the rotation and curve and gradient, and that's it. I'm going to set a prefix on the graph input group, and it's going to be generator, capitalized generator. I'm going to call it shape 1. This slash creates a subgroup. So generator shape 1, all these will be in shape 1, and prefix. This doesn't matter. Let's just do this and it should be fine. If I do see, it'll show me if it's conflicting. You'll see the check marks here. If it's conflicting, it'll give me like a yellow icon. So I put OK, and now you see that these turned, so I can't, I can't mess around with them. They have been exposed in the parameters. So if I double click on the canvas, I can see in the input parameters, I can see the properties. Now, well, right now you're getting a really long name, so you're getting generator shape 1 sides, and then the same here, and the same with the curve, and the same with gradient, and that's going to be like a ridiculously long name. So in general, what I do is just copy what the label was and put it in labels, just to shorten, make it shorter. Same with curve. And same with gradient. When it comes to the rotation, I usually want to set it to just a balanced number, and same I saw in the gradient, there was a 0.3, so I'm going to put this at 0.5. And I keep looking back to see if the changes I'm doing in here are harming the rock, as opposed to, helping it out, because I want to make sure to keep the base parameters so it gives a good result from the get-go. And then if by tweaking it, you'll still have to use the levels in some cases to make the rock not clip and look alright. But in general, you want to have, as a general rule, you want to have the properties for your nodes have a good base. So when you place it, you already have a nice rock or a nice grunge or etc. So going back to the tiling and to the gradient here, this one, let's just test it out what it does. So as you can see, there's no real reason why I need the tiling effect. I mean, sure enough, I'm looking at this, I'm getting some ideas. Like, that's pretty cool, whatever that is. I mean, I can use that for something else, maybe sand. It's just an interesting idea. So, but again, it's just looking at how it works. But yeah, I'm not going to expose any parameters in this because it's not useful for the generator itself. I go to splatter. In this case, I wanna do some other bits. Oh, let me close that. Okay, so I'm trying to decide what I want to do. So let's see the number. Let's see how the numbers affect it. So setting the number to 1, I get the triangle shape. So setting the number higher, I start getting a smoother kind of rock. So using radius also gives some interesting results. So this is a parameter I might want to expose. So I'll leave this at 20. I'll leave this at 1. Now radius random. Again, radius random might be a good one to expose as well. Seems like it's working well enough. Pattern specific, it has no real effect. Pattern size. So this one's curious because in some situations it gets some hard edges that might be desired, but in this case I'll just leave them at 0.5, 0.5. I'll leave them at 1 and 1. I don't think I'm going to expose parameter size. Let's see parameter size random. And I don't think I'm going to expose this one. Pattern scale. Doesn't seem like I should expose this one either. So just set that to 1. And rotation. So if you see, I'm just kind of trying to figure out what I did wrong here. And I think I know what's going on. So I think in this case, almost the only one that I can expose is number, radius, and radius random. So these are the ones I'm going to expose. Number, radius, and radius random. Everything else will not get exposed. Same, it's going to go in the generator. And it's going to go under shape 2. And let's see our exposed parameters in the attributes. Let's see if they're organized. So let's set number to label, radius to label, radius random, and that one was labeled. So sometimes why it's good to do this way is if you have this node afterwards and you're putting in another substance node and you already have all this information put in, it'll actually bring all of the labels and connect them properly. In this case, whoever did the splatter, probably algorithmic, actually did put the label inside their generator to so it would pass over. As for the levels, I'm just gonna leave it like so. Actually, I think I need to test something here. I'm gonna grab a histogram scan. I'm gonna plug it into a histogram. Maybe what I need to do here is have this connected to a histogram so it's easier to control the height. So that's what I'll do. Instead of the levels, I'm going to have a histogram. And this will be exposed parameter, position and contrast, under generator, under shape, height, balance, and expose. Then make sure it's in there. Shape, height, balance, and then copy height balance position into the label. Take away capitalize each of them, and then on the other one do the same. Instead it's height balance contrast. So what we want to do here is expose this. Let me see if Algorithmic has done switches. Multi-switch grayscale. So this is a really nifty tool. I'm glad they finally added switches. This is something that we actually have natively in Naughty Dog, but they must have grabbed it from us or got the idea from us and put it in Algorithmic. So we have two single switches, which is a foreground background switch, and then you have a multi-switch. And the multi-switch, it switches via the input switch down here. So I only have 4, so when I'm at 4 I would pick whatever's connected to here. Now why is this important? In this case it's important because of this one gradient. I want to rotate it by 90 degrees each time. That way I can keep seeing the result randomly and controlled. If I was to expose all these parameters, I would get this big matrix and plus all these offsets that I don't really need. So I'm just making sure that this will switch 90 degrees each time. So there's probably several really fancy ways to do that, and I'm just going to show you the very basic way I tend to do these. Is duplicate it 4 times and then connect them. And this switch connects to histogram scan. And if it's on 1, it's on 1. So let me move this out of the way, because this will become part of its separate node structure. So there we go. Okay. So now we have it set up. Right now they're not changing because there's no pre-inputted information in here. So 90 degrees, 180, and 90. So each one should be changing now. So if I go to this one, I switch, and I get all my switches. So now what I can do, now I can expose this guy. So I'll do expose parameter, and I'll do an input switch, and I'll set it to as well generator. And I'll call this gradient cut, because it's the gradient that's cutting the stone into an angle. So I'll call it the gradient cut. And set OK. Now in here, now I have generator gradient cut, and it has input switch as a label. So instead of input switch, because this makes no sense, is rotate switch. And if you see down here, we have a min and a max. So right now the slider will go from 1 to 10. In this case I want to clamp it down, and I want to set the max at 4. So now I can only change this. I can only change this to 4. I can't go beyond that. So remember when I said that you can overdrive some settings? Well, if it's been clamped, you can't do that. It forces it to stay at 4. Now this becomes nifty when you're doing graphs that work in certain parameters and in certain settings, but you don't want them to go from one point to other beyond those points, because then it'll start breaking your graphs. So what you do is clamp it to that effect. And then what you could do is a little bit more complex, but you can actually go in there. Let's say the effect, it looked great at 15 to 80, but beyond those points it started to look horrible. Well, you can actually set those numbers inside the functions graphs, and make it seem like those numbers go from 1 to 10. I won't go over that. You can read about it on algorithmic documentation. It's pretty easy in general. It's just multiply, divides, add and additions, nodes, and I'll show you quickly how the functions look. But you can go into here and you'll see the integers and input switches here. So these are the functions, and basically you can right click and you add an element, and you have vector, variables, samples, casts, operators, logics. I'm not amazing at these. It's something that I have yet to really get knee deep into. But you can create some interesting effects with this, and some interesting functions to control your graphs even further. So I would recommend at least getting to know the basic structure here and there, if you have time. Okay, so we have our rotating switch, and now let's go back to here, and the histogram. I'm looking at this histogram, and I'm not sure I want to expose the parameters. I think I'm just going to leave it as is. Let's go to the distort. So we have warp angle, which is creating some awesome variant effects. We have the intensity, and I want people to be able to destroy the rock like this, so I won't clamp it. But I'll set this to 0 in its original state, and I'll go back to the warp and do a reset to default values. And I'll do, actually I won't set this to 0, I want to set it to 15. The reason I'm setting it to 15 is because if people start using the rotate, they're not going to see anything happen if it's set to 0. So I'll give them a little bit of intensity on a directional warp. And reset that again, and do expose parameters, and do intensity and warp. And I'm going to put a prefix in this case, just so I remember what it is. Directional warp intensity. You see how I needed to add a space? That's so it adds a space there. And we'll call this generator warp. Call it shape warp. Again, copy over that, copy over that bit as well. Nice, directional warp angle. Oh well. Just making sure that's organized, like so. And then head to the next warp. And again, test it out, see how it's reacting. What do I want from it? Do I want anybody to go beyond 50? I want anybody to go beyond 20. How about 30? That seems like it's still usable. Just give them a little bit more. Okay. So I'll leave it at 15. I'll set it to default. And I was thinking of clamping this just now, but I think I won't. And the reason for that is because there might be a need for the artist to warp it into something ridiculous like that we were just seeing, where it was breaking the shape into multiple smaller shapes. So I'll leave that in, and the artist can decide to destroy it or maintain it. I'm putting height, sorry. I want, this one will be called large form noise. put OK. Noise intensity, noise warp intensity, I'm adding into the group warp just so people don't get confused. And noise warp angle. Noise warp intensity and noise warp angle. Exposing to generator again, and this one will also go to large warp. Okay, let's just do large. I want to change this, but I forgot what it's called. Because I can always change it over here. I'm just gonna do it here. Basically, I just want to copy this guy, because I want it to be included in the same subgroup, because it's doing very similar things anyhow. So, and I'll call it secondary. Noise warp intensity. And to organize it, I'm just gonna click and drag up just to move it up. So it's under noise warp and then secondary noise warp intensity. And then noise warp angle below. So we have that. Slope. Yeah, again, it's just going through a node and testing it out before I expose it. And that's really just what I keep doing. I just keep exposing parameters, seeing what works. In this case, I see some value in the mode, so I'm going to let that be exposed. And I'll call this slope. So generator slope erode, and I won't do the sample, so let's just do an intensity and then mode. Put intensity and then mode, and mode's already connected. So in this case, I will expose this parameter, opacity, and I'll put it in generator. Under slope, erode, just like the other one. And instead of an opacity, I'll call it intensity. Form intensity. I'm not going to expose these parameters on top because I just think that it won't give the results that people are giving. I mean, you can give it a little bit more cracking, but it's something I just... Actually, I don't know. I want to expose these. It becomes... I just want that to be part of the generation scheme. And maybe later I'll decide that I want to expose this and I can come back to this and expose that properly. And now we're to our last one, height balance. And this one, expose the parameters, position, contrast, call it height balance. Height histogram balance. I'm naming it histogram just so people remember to follow this. This is basically at the end, if your node is breaking, you can start tweaking with this and seeing if it's balancing it out. And expose. See the parameters. Bring position to position. And bring contrast to the label. And I'm just gonna leave that. And let's make sure to save. So now we have a rock so these I don't really expose. If you're wondering why I didn't expose these, I mean, I could expose these, but what's the point when you have random seed up here? And you'll see how that works. So let's go to my pebbles. I want to bring that here so you can see the texture. I'm going to take off the histogram and let me balance this texture up again. Now let's go, not edit, go to shader, Make sure it's set to physical shader. Give it a little bit of relief. And let's bring our rock example node into here. Now you'll quickly notice that this one has more outputs than this, and that's because, and it's also super expensive. There's a reason for that. If we go to open reference, go back into that graph, let's go to double click the canvas. We have output size set in here because we are seeing it. So let's go reset to default, put it to 0, and just for cleanliness, let's take these out because they're useless to us. Save and go back to pebbles, and you'll see that the graph became 1024, and as well as it took out the outputs. And if I was to search this, in theory, it should only generate the height. So perfect, now we have our little rock. So now let me connect this to that. And our rock propagated into this whole graph. So if you see all the generators, so if when you open this graph, you'll have just generator, and you'll have hide histogram balance. So you open up generator, you have a lot of subgroups. So you have shape 1, which has a lot of properties, shape 2, they have a pre-shape height balance, gradient cut, which probably needs a histogram for the balance of the height, but I'll go back to that. And shape warps, large form warp noise, slope erode. So now let's replace all the other stones and get different variations. So just so it's not lagging too much, I'm just gonna make the variation on these. And one pro tip tool, since these are really only using a small part of the tileable canvas for texture, a total of 1024, what you can actually do for these, so they're not as expensive, because they're 152.3 milliseconds, which is not horrible. It's actually pretty cheap, as well as these are pretty cheap. This one's probably in red. The only reason it's in red is probably reading correctly. It's a substance thing. This one seems like it's correct up here. So a thing you can do is actually, by clicking onto a node, go into base parameters and the output size, you can actually do a -1 or -2, bring them down. And now they're a lot less expensive. Let me connect this guy to this guy. Let me delete these guys. Let me duplicate it several times. So here's a 3D view. I'm just trying to put it in here so you can see it better. And let's have fun with rocks. So you see what's happening in my texture? It made everything upstream expensive. Sorry, not expensive. It made everything 256 by 256. And there's a reason for that. It made it nice and blurry for us. Well, because we brought all these down to 256. So what you need to do here is bring these up by the amount inverse of that. So the rocks are inputted into these, and then they're scaled properly within the graph. So there you go. Now we have some crazy looking stones. Let's go at width. And there you go. And we have a crazy stone texture. It's not very nice looking in here, and I can definitely tweak it to make it look nice, but that's not really part of the lesson. They're inputted, they work, and I can just tweak all these parameters to get the rocks to look well. So just to show you again some of the textures that were developed like this. These are textures that are done in my free time, so they're not fully polished, but they're here. This was done in a similar fashion. All these small stones in here were done for this mud texture. The mud texture was done procedurally inside a substance as well, not using this technique, but just using general height information and generators, noises, warps, blends, etc. This was rendered in Marmoset. There's the actual graph of the mud and the stones. This was actually the stone generator before becoming a stone generator. And then if we go to these guys, these are like the better examples. They're not 100% fully polished, but they're a little better looking. These are done with the stone generators, with the dirt put on the layer on top. You see how quickly you can get variations. These were done in a span of like 10 minutes or so, just messing with properties, getting it, seeing how it will work together, and tinting. let me save my files. So I hope you like this. It's definitely one of those workflows that I haven't seen anywhere, and it was really cool when we first found out. And I tested out at home first, and then I brought it to work, and people were like, "What the hell's going on?" It's just an interesting workflow that nobody even really thought about until they saw it firsthand. All right. Thank you for being patient for an hour, showing you pretty boring stuff in general. And I know it was slow. If you stayed around, thank you. If you didn't, well, you can see it in pauses. Either way, this is a workflow, and hope you like it. Hope you enjoy. Do send examples. I love to see examples. I love to see what people are working on. If you have any questions, please feel free to send an email. My email is written in the back of this video. It will be placed there. Let me talk about other things I plan to do. These tutorials I'm doing are first just to get started on the whole tutorial scheme of things. But basically, I'm going to make a blog that includes environment, tutorials, workflows, commentary about games that I like or that other people have shown me, things I like from websites, art websites, anything having to do with environment art. So that's going to be the kind of an ongoing goal, and there's no set date yet when I'll open up the blog officially. I mean, the blog is open, but it has no content. So I'm going to start putting content in, and once it's at least filled in with a couple pages, then I'll officially release it to everybody. If you guys have any content that could be cool, definitely give me a shout. I'm going to put it in. We can put it in and work together. Alright, well, thank you, and see you guys until the next tutorial or whichever.